Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Arguably, the most important post in the Indian military has been virtually empty for 5 months. I'm talking of the post of Chief of Defence Staff, and no one has any idea when the government will fill the post. So today we ask, is this a matter of concern? Joining me to answer that question is India's former Chief of Army Staff and one of the country's foremost military thinkers, General Ved Prakash Malik. General Malik, before I come to the delay in appointing a Chief of Defence Staff, would you explain for the audience why is this post of Chief of Defence Staff so important?
Good morning, Karan. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Yes, it's a very important question. And this post of CDS is very important. We realized it during Kargil war that we needed greater synergy and greater jointmanship to be able to have a more effective, more economical armed forces. And that has been so. In fact, the others have been following that for a long time. Today, if you ask me, there are 70 countries who have got similar concept with the CDS heading that. Our government took 20 years, Karan, to sanction the post of CDS. And when it came, unfortunately, after a couple of years, we lost the first incumbent, that is late General Rawat, who unfortunately died in that. Now, this post is very important because today, unless all the three forces work together with greater synergy, and they have a common doctrine, we have seen that they are not effective. And that is why almost all countries have adopted this concept.
That's a very clear answer. And I'll underline one thing, that unless all three forces work together and have a common doctrine, we have seen they are not effective. In other words, the CDS enhances the effectiveness of our services. Let me then, against that background and against that context, come to the delay. It's nearly 5 months, almost to the day, since General Rawat met with that terrible accident and died. But the government has not appointed a new Chief of Defence Staff. Given that the CDS is both the permanent chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee and also the principal military advisor to the Defence Minister, how do you view this 5-month delay?
This delay has put us, I would call it, an undesirable situation. In such appointments, it is not desirable at all. I can give you some very important reasons which are affected by this delay, which should not have happened. Let's first start with, the transformational process which had been initiated, which was mandated to General Rawat and which had been initiated by him, has now come to a halt. 5 months is far too long. And the worry is that these three services will go back to the silos working in which we were working before this. That is one aspect. The second aspect.
Can I just interrupt, sir? Can I just interrupt? You're talking about, in fact, the task of creating the new integrated command structures. This is what's come to a halt, and you're scared that the services will go back to working in silos rather than working in an integrated way. Is that correct?
Yeah, I will. That is correct. But I'm going to elaborate a little more because all these functions are important, which have come to a halt, if I can use that word. Let me first, I mentioned about the other point that I want to mention is that, look, we are in a serious strategic situation today with an active border on the west as well as on the north, and particularly I would say in the north. Now, under these circumstances, when you require synergy and when you require greater jointmanship, it has adversely affected it is likely to adversely affect our posture and our working together on these borders. So that, I would say, the operational readiness and lack of operational effectiveness is the other aspect that I want to. The other task that was given to the CDS when it was appointed was greater defense planning which involves all the three services, which involves operational planning, manpower planning, operational planning, um, common training, joint training, so that we can have better jointmanship. And of course, more important is the greater logistics requirement, which we want to have it common. So these things will be affected when you do not have a CDS. And that is another important issue. And the third, I would say that unfortunately, it has already started a lot of speculation, a lot of, I would say, suspense amongst the senior ranks of the armed forces, which is not a desirable thing to happen, because that can affect the morale of all the complete services. So for operational reason, for doctrinal reason, for strategic reasons, and of course for the manpower planning and our HR functioning, I think CDS should be appointed as early as possible.
I'll just repeat for the audience the four very important points you made, because I think it's important that lay audiences should understand them. We've suffered 4 areas of setback as a result of not appointing a chief of defense staff for almost 5 months. First, the integration of the commands, which was essential to the future of our armed forces, has stopped. It's come to a halt. As you said it, you're scared, in fact, the 3 services could go back into silos. Secondly, you said our operational readiness and preparedness on 2 borders, but particularly the northern border, is affected by the absence of the CDS. Thirdly, you said the emphasis on greater defense planning, both operational and in terms of manpower, but also in terms of joint training and logistics, has been affected adversely. And then there's also the speculation and suspense, which is undesirable because it creates fissures in the ranks and it creates tension. For all 4 reasons, this 5-month gap has been very inadvisable. Have I summed you up correctly, sir?
Absolutely.
Then the question that arises to people's minds is this, General Malik: does the government not understand, A, the importance of the post of Chief of Defense Staff? Because the message it sends out by not appointing one for 5 months is that this is not an important post, it can wait.
Look, I do not know what the government is thinking, but as I said earlier, it is not a desirable situation. Armed forces are functioning, working along the border all along. There is no break in their work. The work continues. Similarly, the transformational that we desire is a continuous process. It cannot be halted. It cannot be in fits and starts. So therefore, while I do not know what the government thinking is, all I'm saying is that such a long break is undesirable.
Is it possible that the government is not aware of the 4 adverse outcomes that you categorized so very clearly? Do you think they're not aware and don't understand the impact?
As I said, I do not know what the government thinking is. I've been out of the government for a long time now. But let me put it again that amongst the strategic thinkers, this is a worry which is being expressed both by the veterans as well as the journalists. And yesterday, in fact, I read an article in Times of India, and you see more and more such articles coming. Why this delay?
And so there's no way the government can be unaware of the consequences of this delay. If therefore they continue to delay it, it must be that they don't think these issues matter.
As I said, these issues matter. These issues matter all the time. And therefore, any delay is not a good thing in these matters. After all, we do appoint chiefs without any break whatsoever. We may give them a slightly shorter notice these days. In my days, we were given 2 months notice. Now I notice that people are getting shorter notice. But yet, we have never missed out on the chief of army staff or naval staff or the air force staff not being in chair for some time. That has never happened. Similarly, I feel the CDS is also important, if not more important. And therefore, this chair should never be kept vacant.
Now, General Malik, many people had thought that in fact the new Chief of Defense Staff would be the last Army Chief General Naravne, but that didn't happen. Now, if the government were to choose to appoint a CDS from the Army, whoever the person is would be junior to the new Army Chief General Manoj Pandey. Similarly, if they were to choose to appoint a new CDS from the Navy and the Air Force, whoever they choose would be junior to the serving Navy and Air Force chiefs. So would such a selection from a serving officer, whether in the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force, create a particular problem?
Karan, firstly, let's be very clear that appointment of CDS is the government's prerogative. They have to select the best person. I mean, as far as that part is concerned, you cannot get away from that. And I think that has always been in any democratic country where they have appointed CDS. Now, coming to the Army, Navy, and Air Force, to me, it doesn't matter whether the person is from the Army or the Navy or the Air Force. Let the best man be there. That is the important thing, the best man amongst all these. The second question that you have raised is whether the person should be from a serving Army, or should be a retired person or a veteran person. Again, there have been instances in USA where some retired person was called to head as chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee in USA. So again, I go back, I said it is the government's prerogative to select the best person, and there should be no bias at all, neither political or anything. They can pick up somebody from any of the three services. You're right that most people thought that Naravne will take over as CDS, which did not happen. But then one doesn't know what has been the government thinking on this whole issue.
You made two very important points there, General Malik. Can I take them up one by one? First was, it doesn't matter from which of the three services the new CDS is chosen, as long as the best person is chosen. There are some in the Army who say that, in fact, the Army is almost 9 times bigger than the Air Force. It's 18 times bigger than the Navy. And therefore, in these early days, remember, we've only had one CDS. The post itself is only 2.25 years old, and the person appointed will be the second CDS. People say in these early days, till the job stabilizes, the post should remain with the Army. Later, it can be handed to the Air Force and the Navy. How do you respond to that view?
Well, some people may think that way. I don't think that way. And I feel the best person, whether he's from the Army, Navy, or Air Force, should be appointed. And I mean, why wait? Something which you have accepted, the CDS can be from the three services. Then what is the point of waiting for so many years and all? And size, of course, doesn't matter, because every service has got its own role, its own characteristics. And at the top level, when you start functioning together, when you develop the strategic plans, military strategy plans, then you are working together and you are making best use of your services in your planning. So, as I said, it doesn't matter to me whether it is from somebody from the Army, Navy, or Air Force, as long as he is the best qualified person.
The second point you made was that it's not unknown in countries like America that a retired officer is brought back to function as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In our case, that would be the job of the chairman of the Defense Staff. Tell me, how far back can one afford to go? How many years can the person be retired before he's brought back? Because technology changes, plans change, and you lose touch.
You're right. We are talking of Chief of Defense Staff. And yes, you are right that it should not be somebody who was retired long ago. The important factors are that the strategic changes are taking place so frequently these days. And similarly, the technology changes are taking place so frequently these days. Your weapon systems, your whole concept is changing. I mean, one is learning so many lessons from Ukraine war, for example, these days. So many questions have come. I have put them on the tweet also, that look, it's time now we start reviewing all these issues. So therefore, I would expect somebody who was retired very recently and not very long ago.
That is the important thing. Whoever is chosen, and I won't name names, that would be invidious, but whoever is chosen, if it's going to be a retired person, should have retired very recently.
Right.
One last question, General Malik. As you know, military officers, and this is true of all three services, have often felt, often suspected that delays, even obstruction, is brought in terms of taking decisions which affect the armed forces by civil servants. The bureaucracy often holds things up. Could it be that in this instance, the 5-month delay in appointing a chief of defense staff is a result of civil service delays, civil service obstruction?
Look, in the process, they have a role to play indeed. But when it comes to final decision making, it is the political leadership which does. And I think the political leadership should be wise to this. They should be careful and they should be aware of it, that these delays are not, there are no such delays. So while one doesn't know whether whether bureaucracy was responsible for this kind of a thing or not, ultimately responsibility must lie with the political leadership.
In other words, the buck stops with the political leadership.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because I've never heard of a defense secretary appointment being held up and delayed by 5 months. I've never heard of a cabinet secretary appointment being held up for 5 months. We've always had defense secretaries and cabinet secretaries succeeding each other. This is the first time that arguably the most important post in the military has been left unfilled for 5 months, and we don't know when it will be filled.
Karan, that is what I have right from the beginning emphasized, that this is one post which cannot be left vacant. It is undesirable. We have started a transformational process and we cannot afford to break it in between. This post is as important as the Chief of Army Staff, Naval Staff, and Air Staff, if not more. And therefore, as I started off, that it is not a desirable thing to happen, this long break which has already taken place.
General Malik, thank you very much for that very clear answer. And I'll just repeat for the audience what you said. This post is as important as the Chief of Army Staff, Navy Staff, and Air Staff, if not more. That's the important point. It may be the most important job in the military, and it's been empty for 5 months, and we don't know when it will be filled. I thank you for this interview, General Malik. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Karan.